Hi, everybody. It's Judi, and welcome. Today is day 2 of the Burnout Solutions series, and I've collected some of the best experts for you to teach you all about how to have your own burnout solution. And I'm excited because today is all about accountability. Set and keep strong boundaries so that you can become radically self-reliant and have more time with your friends, with your family, and for yourself. And I want to remind you that we're going to be meeting every day throughout this online series in our Facebook group called the More Than Enough Women Circle. I'll be live this evening, so don't miss our daily recap and highlights. Plus, I'll be there to answer any questions. I want to make sure that you can take action on the tools and the skills that you learn each day. So if you haven't already, head on over to the More Than Enough Women Circle. So before I kick things off, let me introduce you to today's expert. It is Helene Segura. She is a time management fixer that delivers thought-provoking yet entertaining time management keynotes and seminars that give busy professionals the powerful strategies and tactics they need to slay wasted time. By improving efficiency, she helps companies lower employee stress levels, decrease absenteeism, improve retention, and increase profits. And I am so excited because our topic today is going to be focused on how to tell your time what to do. Hi, Helene. How are you? I'm so excited to have you here today.
Hi, Judi. Thank you so much for having me.
And I want to jump in, dive right in, because we have so much to cover, and I'm like, I've been waiting to talk to you because I just have so many curious questions because of what you do. But the first one is, why do you think that overwhelm and burnout is such an epidemic these days?
I think that in our quest and in our zeal to want to pack in as much as we can in life and to make sure that we're successful at work and we're successful in our personal life, a lot of us forget how to say no in order to say yes to more quality activities in our life. And so we just end up piling all of these responsibilities on top of ourselves, and that just leads to burnout.
Got it. And I also want to get a sense as to, when you think about being organized, right? Like, what does that mean to you? And especially in terms of time management, like, what does that mean?
Well, if we're talking about being organized from a physical point of view, that means that you can find whatever you need within less than a minute. And we're talking about being organized from a time management point of view. That means that you can run your day even when all of these crazy things start swirling around you and these requests are being made of you. Even though those things are happening, you are organized from a time management point of view if you know how to react to all of those requests. And at the end of the day, you still feel like you got things done.
And I do love that at the end of the day. I'm one of those people that makes the lists and I check things off, and that makes me feel like super happy. So here's one of my this is again a burning question I wanted to ask you, and it's like, so I'm curious, what do you use? Like, what are the tools and the apps or whatever? Like, what is it that you think that is just the best in terms of being able to do this?
I promise I will share tools with you, but first I want to mention that even though there are so many task apps out there and there are so many calendar apps or paper versions of calendars, and those are all important tools, the actual most critical tool is our brains, because time truly is all about mind management, because it's our brain that decides how we're going to use every second of every minute of every day. And it's our brain that decides how we react to these requests that come in. It's our brain that decides if we stay in overwhelm, if we're going to procrastinate, if we're going to go down a rabbit hole for an hour. So the secret that I share with everybody is that I take time to plan at the end of each day for what's going to happen the next day. And this is what I work on with my clients, is just blocking off the last 10 to 15 minutes of each day to figure out, okay, what happened today? Do I need to push anything to the next day? Do I need to change anything on my calendar? What do I need to have ready for tomorrow so I am not scrambling? And once you planning with your brain, then you can take out your task apps and your calendars and figure out what to do. So I use a CRM system called Insightly, which coordinates with the Google platform. So I use Google Business, and through that I manage email and my calendar, and then also all of my project management and tasks.
Wow. Oh, cool. Well, I'll have to check that out because I do use Google Calendar, but I didn't know about the other Insightly. That's really cool. But I also want to underscore, and I I was like laughing on the inside. I'm like, yeah, of course, my brain is what is making the choices in terms of
Right.
how I'm going to use my time. And
Mhm.
I think that there are times well, I can speak for myself, that sometimes I choose to go down rabbit holes, and it's like, I know that if I start going through my email box, I'm going to be in that hole for about an hour, and then I'm going to come out and I'm going to say, okay, where did all that time go?
Right.
But I do think that if we take that ownership, that responsibility that we
Mhm.
have, to manage our time. But the other thing that I also want to underscore, it's another golden nugget, is planning the next day, the day before, because
Mhm.
it's like, I also think that when I do that, my mind thinks about solutions when I'm sleeping. And I wake up sometimes the next day and I'm like, oh, I can like do that in 5 seconds because, my mind has been working on like solutions to problems that I've thought about the day before. Is that something that you've experienced?
Definitely. And in fact, you bring up something that happens to a lot of folks out there. They have a lot of sleep issues, not just because they're sleeping with their smartphone next to their bed that's making noises and vibrations and waking them up throughout the night, but a lot of people have sleep issues because they've got so much going on in their heads that their brains won't allow them to fall asleep. So when you do all of this planning ahead of time, you start to clear all of that clutter out of your brain so it can start to relax. And when your brain is in a relaxed mode, whether it's during the dream stage or whether it's when you wake up and it's the first 10 minutes in the morning, you have so much more clarity to create these solutions that you need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I also find sometimes too that like on a Sunday night, I try to look at the whole week
Yes.
because sometimes that gives me again a plan of like, okay, what do I have coming at me? And I can somehow like, plan in my brain, okay, this is what's coming at me this week. And I'll know like how much energy I need throughout the week to kind of like ride the wave.
Oh, definitely. Planning ahead is so huge. And for anybody who dreads Mondays, I actually encourage you to do that planning time Friday afternoon so you can thoroughly enjoy your weekend. Because subconsciously, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I might have to do this on Monday. What's happening next week? But when you clear that off Friday, when you're getting off work, I
Mm.
think you'll be able to enjoy your weekend even more.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's definitely another way of doing it. I love that. So, I know in your book you talk about time leaks. So,
Mhm.
what do you mean by time leaks?
Time leaks are these little escapes of time that we don't even realize are happening when we're on autopilot. Have you ever just driven somewhere and you're pulling into the parking space and you think, oh my gosh, I do not remember driving here? It's because you are on autopilot. And when we run our days like that, when we're just working, working, and going to the next thing without really thinking through what we're doing, then we tend to notice all of these leaks. A huge leak is just simply looking for stuff in the office. And that
Mm.
person loses a total of 6 weeks per year. It's not all at once, it's in little leaks here and there. We lose 6 weeks a year just looking for stuff in the office. It's incredible.
It's kind of like when we're disorganized, when we have to go and find something because haven't put it in its place, right? It's like
Right. So
we waste time looking for stuff. Okay, I got it.
exactly. Yeah, so 30 seconds here, a minute there, 10 minutes there. Another huge time leak is checking our devices. Adults unlock their phones an average of 110 times per day. And neuroscience tells us that when we switch tasks, we need to take an average of 60 minutes in brain restart time. So each time we're switching tasks to go to our cell phone to check the messages, we're losing a minute. You do that 110 times per day, that's 110 minutes of time leaks that you could have back just from not being at the beck and call of your device.
Mm.
is supposed to be a tool. It's not supposed to be your boss and control your day. So I am in no way suggesting that you stop checking messages, but you need to check when your brain is ready to receive them. So that's a common time leak. And then, of course, procrastination. Procrastination is huge. You know, we might procrastinate for 2 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes around midday, 30 minutes in the afternoon. That time adds up.
My gosh. Well, again, I want to underscore these because it's true. Being disorganized, like I definitely have places in my office, like this is where this goes, this is where that goes. And if I don't put them back, you know, like inadvertently, if I don't put them back right in their place, I will have to spend more time looking for something. And I literally had to do that yesterday when I was doing an assessment with a client. And I had somehow put it somewhere else because I probably got distracted or something. And I remember like searching around. I'm like, where is that thing? And then I ended up printing it out all over again. So I ended up, you know, wasting paper and time and all that stuff. But I also agree with you in terms of checking my device. I recently decided that I was going to put it on vibrate and not have the dinging sound because I literally felt like Pavlovs Dog. Like every time it was like, boom, boom. Like it was just like, I really did. Like I would notice that my body would shake or like, you know, respond every time I heard the phone. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to put it on vibrate for a while. And I've actually gotten more stuff done. I feel calmer. And it really, I love it. It's like this little experiment that I started on myself and I absolutely love it.
Good. I'm glad you found that because that is such a huge time leak. And when you add up this time, it's absolutely incredible when you start looking at how much time you can gain back. When I have my clients track their time, they come off autopilot, they start realizing where their time is going. And when they add up those time leaks, you can average 3 hours a day of lost time. So imagine 3 fewer hours per day just because you're telling your time what to do instead of letting it leak out.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other little trick thing that I do too is I set the timer and I give myself a time for task. It's like, okay, you've got 20 minutes and you've got to just like focus. And that also helps me because I remember a long time ago, Tony Robbins had said in one of his workshops that if I give you 20 minutes or I give you an hour, that's how long it's going to take you to do this task. So I always try to, you know, think about how can I do this in 20 minutes and not, you know, obviously I don't want to sacrifice quality, but I want to train my brain to focus and really get on it. So yeah. So I also know that a lot of my clients are creatives or people that are more, how do I say, go with the flow people, right? So how do they deal with some of this? Because structure and calendars and all that kind of stuff, like, yeah, they're kind of like, yeah, not so much. So how do you deal with that?
Like everything in life, we have to learn how to balance. We have to balance our nutrition. We have to balance our sleep. We also have to balance how we manage our days. And it's really important to have a balance of both structure and flow. Because you need to have some kind of structure so you get the most important tasks done that you need to fulfill. But at the same time, if you work with people or technology or both, you know that life will never go according to plan. So you have to have room for flow in there. And you need a flow for putting out fires. You need flow for opportunities that come your way. You need flow for these ideas that suddenly come to you when you're not as burned out and stressed anymore. So that's why it's absolutely critical to have some kind of structure, preferably earlier in the day. Because what most people find is that as the day goes on, more fires happen or more opportunities happen, so they no longer have that time anymore to get their most important tasks done. So for all of my creative clients who are really fearful of moving into any kind of structure, we start slowly. We start with just structuring the first hour of their day. That's it. Just experience what structure is like. And what they begin to realize is that the more structure and planning they do, the more free time they now have for their creativity. So end up structuring their entire morning once we get to that point, and they have the entire afternoon as flex time. They can be creative or they can continue to work on whatever task they had. They don't feel as constrained. And what's really funny is that even some of my artsiest artists, for lack of a better term, they have some fully structured days because they feel like I just get so much more done. And then
Mm-hmm.
a total free day on Friday or whatever day of the week that they want. So finding that balance of structure and flow is really important. And that's why I'm not going to give an exact number because all of us are different.
Right.
And structure and flow could change every single day. So you want to figure out that balance. How much structure do you need and how much flow would you like to have?
Right. All right. So again, I really want to just reiterate those points because yeah, having that structure in the morning, I call it front loading. You know, in my experiences, I get the toughest things done and the most detail oriented because I'm not very detail oriented. So I do all that stuff like first thing in the morning. Like if it's invoicing or budgeting or anything to do with spreadsheets, like that has to be done before 10 o'clock. Like it just has to. Otherwise, it'll get done the next day. So I
Right.
just have to train myself to get that done. But the other thing that you talked about was, you know, allowing for that, you know, opportunity for problems and having that flexibility. And, you know, what I happen to know just because I teach Myers-Briggs personality type is that certain people are very, very structure oriented and that other people are just go with the flow. And it's easier for people that are go with the flow to become more structured than it is for people that are structured to become more go with the flow. So, so I think that our society also kind of makes it so that we're supposed to, you know, you know, have that structure, which I think is really great. So here's another thing I want to talk about because you kind of touched on it a little bit. And it's this concept of flex time, because I think it's a little ambiguous for people. Like we hear it, it's a buzzword. What does it mean to you? Because I have an experience of what I think it means, but what do you mean by flex time?
Well, if you're somebody who works for a company that allows the so-called flex time, that means that you are allowed to shift hours in the day as long as you get your required number of hours in the week. It's all up to you. If you're talking about personal time management, then flex time can mean you have this block of time where nothing is planned and you can move that block around as necessary. So you can have a specific block of flex time. Now, for my super structured clients, we talk about using flex time in different parts of the day. So for instance, for the clients who used to have every single minute of the day planned out, we talk about not doing that because the reason why they're stressed is because it doesn't go to plan and they feel like they're behind. So we talk about how much of your day is reactionary. Do you think you spend an hour a day on fires or opportunities, 2 hours, 3 hours? And we build that in as flex time. So if you think that about 3 hours of your day is usually reactionary, we'll build in an hour and a half of flex time in the morning, an hour and a half of flex time in the afternoon. So if anything does come up, it's okay. You know, if you had a task during that time frame, it's all right. You have some flex time built in. You have some padding in your schedule. You don't have to panic. And if nothing comes up, well, you can move ahead with your tasks. You can get even more done and perhaps even get ahead for the next couple of days. So flex time simply means you are creating a time plan that's going to work for you with structure and flow.
Yeah. Okay. And I would even take that one step further because, yeah, I understand. I mean, what I was taught was more around the, you know, working the amount of hours and then having a block of time off. So it's like, you know, if you work 4 days a week and then the 5th day is off, or you work 3 weeks out of the month and then that last week is off, so that you really are, you know, being consistent, but allowing yourself like work hard and play hard kind of a thing.
Right.
But what I also notice too, when it comes to creating, and I call it white space, because you're, like you said, it's like if you don't have those buffers and every single minute of the day is blocked out, oh my gosh, the amount of stress that causes. And, you know, it's like sometimes your mind just needs a little bit of like meandering time, you know, it's like puttering. It's like it just needs to putter a little bit and ponder about, you know, just stuff. And maybe some people might say that it's my nap time, but but it's like there's people that pray for white space. But the other strategy that I've also, in my experience, that I've found to be helpful is planning. Like if there's a call, I plan it, like if it's a half an hour call, I plan it so that there's 10 minutes in the beginning and 10 minutes buffer at the end, because I'm going to have to prepare for before I get on the call. And then after, I'm going to want to do something with whatever actions, like immediately I want to be able to do as many actions as I can, because then that makes me more efficient and more productive. And when I don't do that, and I'm just going from task to task to task to task, by the end of the day, I am so exhausted. Like I have like a list of tasks that I have to do, and I have no time or energy to do any of them. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, definitely. And this is really a huge challenge with most especially my clients who are in sales, because they feel like I need to squeeze in as many sales calls as possible, whether it's a call over the phone or a call in person. And when I approach them about building in that buffering time of prepping and getting centered and then debriefing after, and if it's a physical call, making sure that you have commute time and you've padded that physical commute time, they start to panic and think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to see as many prospective clients. So then I have them track, okay, how many clients and sales have you had over the last month? Doing it, packing in as much as you can. And then let's track what's going to happen over the next 3 weeks when you attempt the schedule. And what they've found is that even though they're seeing fewer people, they're spending more quality time with that person. They are more focused on that client's needs. They are much more productive and organized when it comes to meeting the client's requests, and therefore their sales are up, even though seeing fewer people. And it's because they have slowed down and they realize what is happening. They're not just running around like crazy, trying to squeeze in as much as possible.
I love that, like, it's like experiential data that you have, right? It's practical data that you've seen this happen again and again, because people, I don't think they believe it. I think they have this, I know you say slow down, but really? Does it really work? And I love the fact that you actually have seen it happen specifically with the salespeople that, that they actually do get better results. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And I understand there's fear there. That's why I think having that evidence is really important to share with others. It's not just some kind of made up hooey.
Yeah. Woo woo.
It actually works. So it's okay to be afraid to try that. Any kind of change usually causes some kind of fear. But if you will try this for 2 weeks, I will guarantee you will increase your focus and be far more productive.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I also have this question about, like, how did you get into this? Like, how did this become such a passion for you? Was it, I'm also really curious about that, because I do believe that, people have passions around things and to make an impact on the world for certain, for their, they have a big why. So so what's your big why around wanting to help people with productivity and time management?
I actually didn't realize until later in my career why I was so interested in this. I thought it was because I had almost flunked out of college because I couldn't manage my time. I had to figure out how to get my act together. And in the first jobs that I had out of college, I needed to make sure that everything in my life was running smoothly, and my coworkers' lives, because what my coworkers did or didn't do affected me. So I started studying neuroscience. I was very much into educational psychology and change management, behavior management, and that's what launched me into what I do today. I've been doing this for 13 years. But in the process of figuring out the why, just reflecting on, okay, was it really that college experience? Was it really those jobs that stressed me out? I realized that it goes back to my childhood and listening to my parents argue because my dad was working such long hours. And it was because at that time, you're supposed to work in a silo. You weren't supposed to ask for help from other people, especially if you're a man. I mean, what kind of man are you if you ask for help? And so he was trying to do everything on his own, and it was really difficult. And when you talk to his coworkers, it was the same way. They wanted to help each other out, but everybody was afraid of the boss and what the boss would think if they started collaborating and doing things differently. And so I started to realize that it was my fear of having that relationship that my parents had. You know, they didn't, it was enough to impact me. I didn't want that when I grew up. I didn't want that in my adult life. I didn't want that in my marriage. So I think truly that's the driving force behind it. I want to have peace in my life, and I want other people to experience their own peace as well.
Wow, I love hearing those stories. So thank you for sharing that. And shifting gears a little bit, because, you know, some of our audience, we've talked a lot about, I think, more about, you know, corporate people and people that have those types of jobs. So if we switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about entrepreneurs. So let's just say, you know, it's you know, maybe they used to be a corporate person and now they're starting their own business and they haven't like made it yet, right? And they don't have the money to have people support them and help them and stuff like that. Like, how can you ask for help, right? On that thread of asking for help. How do you get help and support when you don't necessarily have the cash?
Right. It's very difficult, no matter what stage you're in of being an entrepreneur, to have that capital ready to go so you can hire the full-time assistant or the part-time assistant. And so actually, before you even look at who to get, you want to look at all of the tasks that you need to complete and where your strengths are, because there are so many hours in the day that you have, and you need to use your brain on your talents, the talents that are going to bring in the most and make the most impact for your business. Then once you figure out what some of those lesser tasks are, they are lesser for your brain, yet they still need to be done. That's when you can start to look for contractors, because it's really expensive. If you want to hire a part-time employee or a full-time employee, you can start contractors for small projects. Once you have some of those small projects under your belt and you're building up that revenue, now you have some revenue that you can spend on either other contractors or looking at getting those part-time employees. And even more importantly, you're going to understand how to utilize them to maximum financial efficiency, because you're going to have specific tasks for them. I've seen so many people jump first by hiring an assistant without thinking about, what is my assistant going to do? So now they've hired the wrong person who doesn't have the skill set or personality to be their assistant. And then they are paying this person to sit there and do almost nothing because they're not sure what tasks they need. So I'm starting out just a small project with the contractor because it's relatively inexpensive. Now, if you don't have the capital to even do that, then look at your other entrepreneur colleagues who are in the same boat as you. You might have offsetting skills, so maybe you can do some bartering. Maybe you have a skill that one of your colleagues needs, and they have a skill that you need, so you can swap maybe a couple of hours on a project and help each other out, because that other person can take 2 hours to do something it would take you 10 hours to do. So you can think about the bartering system as well.
Oh my gosh, I love those suggestions. And I have to say, when I started my business 15 years ago, the first person that I hired was the QuickBooks person, right? Because as I said before, like me and spreadsheets, like no thank you. But I always remembered there was one thing that Oprah had always said is always be the one to write the checks. You know,
yes.
Never delegate that task to anyone. So even though somebody was doing my books and making sure that my expenses were being tracked and all that kind of stuff, I never gave up full responsibility to something like that. So I think that's also another little subtle nuance, is that when you hire those contractors, make sure that you're delegating with responsibility, not with total authority.
Right, exactly.
Because we're still responsible ultimately for our businesses. But I also love that barter idea, and I still do that today, 15 years after being in business. There are certain people that have really amazing skills about design. like they design programs really well, and I love to be able to bounce ideas off of them. And then there's certain skills that I have that I can help them, get through certain challenges and interpersonal relationship stuff, like with business and clients and stuff like that. So it's so interesting. It's like, I totally see how it's improved my business of being able to have that barter mentality. Even when you have a successful business, like, it doesn't mean that goes away.
Exactly.
Having those relationships are really key. And sometimes, what's that? I love the saying, connection is currency. So some of the connections that we have can save us money in that way, but it's also the currency of relationships and how do I want to say this? Strategic alliances, right? Of being able to work more effectively. So I love those suggestions. So, it does kind of take a village, right, to make everything happen. What do you find also are some other, best practices in terms of being productive if you're working, with others and, leading a team, whether it's a virtual team and you have like virtual assistants or contractors or whatnot? Like, what are some other best practices that you can think of?
One of the top tips is just simply to keep an open line of communication. However, that doesn't mean being so open that you're interrupted throughout the day. Because when I have my clients track their time and we look at where do your interruptions actually come from, they're not necessarily from clients coming in. A lot are from their coworkers or their team members, whether they're physically nearby or they're virtual, with questions coming in. So we start talking about how can we keep the lines of communication open to make sure everybody's clear on what they need to do, yet not bother each other. And that turns into a team meeting. It might be a weekly team meeting, or maybe it's twice a month, but the whole point is that it's a team meeting, and it's not just a meeting to have a meeting. There is a set agenda where everybody has to arrive with information, which means they have to prepare. They have to be able to say, this is the project I'm working on. These are the deliverables I need from you by such and such a date. Ends up lessening the questions that come in at the last minute. It ends up lessening those so-called emergencies when somebody has an emergency and tries to make it yours. So everybody has to arrive at this meeting with that information and then take that information, plug it into their calendars. Now, are you still going to have a few questions pop up? Sure, but it's going to cut back so much on those time leaks of the constant questions that come in because nobody had thought about things ahead of time. So my number one best practice for any kind of team is to have that meeting. And again, it needs to be structured. It can't just be a free-for-all. Otherwise, that meeting is a waste of time.
Yeah, it's like, hey, how's it going? Checking in. And it becomes a chat. It doesn't become an actual project. Yeah, and I actually do sometimes make sure that my, from 12 to 1, I really try not to schedule that time. So if people do need to grab me, like that's my, grab me time. Like it's the best time to, quote, interrupt me. But to your point, having, very structured weekly meetings and having everybody on deck, I think really does work so well. And I've also noticed too, that when you have those onesie, twosie kind of conversations, you don't get the cross functionality of things where people have other ideas or other solutions. And I think the only other distinction that I would make there too is I always like people to come with solutions, like not always coming with only problems because sometimes, I don't have all the answers either. Right. So this is, oh my gosh. Well, Helene, I knew this was going to be an amazing interview because like I said, I've been waiting so long to talk to you. And I also wanted to ask you, so if there's one like final tool or idea, I mean, we've covered so many amazing things today, but if there's one thing that you really want our business women to remember, so that it'll keep them out of overwhelm and burnout, like what's that one thing that you really want them to remember?
I want you to remember that no matter what comes at you during the day, you are the owner of your time because you decide how you're going to use your time during the day. And I know that you're a nice person and you're an nurture and you care about others, but if you don't take care of yourself first, you won't be able to help all of those around you. So take the time to plan things out, take care of yourself, and you can tell your time what to do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much because I think that reminding people about putting themselves first, again, I hear a lot of yes buts around that too. Like you said, it's like, yes, but I have to be caring. Yes, but I have to, yes, but you don't understand. I have this big, huge team. And it's like, yeah, but if you don't have, if I say to myself, if I don't have my stuff together, how am I going to be a good leader?
Right.
Or how am I going to be a good coach if I'm not organized and I don't have my time first before I can serve? I always have to give from a full cup. So I absolutely love, love, love that final word. And I want to remind everybody that we have a free gift from Helene right below. And if you haven't done so already, you can still get your VIP backstage pass, which is kind of like, it's a burnout solution in and of itself because you don't have to worry about missing anything. You don't have to stress about it. And you get to download, the audios whenever you want, and you can have access to these. So with that said, I am so grateful to have you here, Helene. And I want to remind everybody that we're going to be in the Facebook group later this evening to answer any questions and to have a discussion. And also, I look forward to seeing you on the next amazing interview.